All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking one of the absolute most fascinating examples of human perception and dramatic irony hidden in an ancient text. You know, we spend a ton of time thinking about how we process new information today, but honestly, human psychology really hasn't changed all that much over the centuries. When we encounter something completely outside our normal frame of reference, our brains just scramble to categorize it using whatever limited vocabulary we happen to already possess. So today we're going to look at a genuinely hilarious yet remarkably profound historical account that captures this exact phenomenon perfectly.
Okay, so let's dive right into this bizarre, honestly pretty striking quote from our source material. This is spoken by a young, incredibly sheltered ascetic named Rishyasringa. He's talking to his father, trying to describe this visitor who just recently showed up at their isolated forest hermitage. Now, to you and me, this description sounds, well, incredibly odd, super clinical, and maybe a little comical. But Rishyasringa, he is dead serious. He is painstakingly trying to articulate a physical feature that he has never, ever encountered before in his entire life.
So, we've got to ask ourselves, what on earth is he actually looking at? To get it, we really have to understand his world. Imagine looking through the eyes of a guy who has literally only ever known male monks, religion, strict fasting, and trees. 0 women, not a single one. So when a beautiful courtesan enters his forest, disguised or at least perceived by him as just another religious student, his brain goes into complete overdrive. He's trying to make sense of something completely foreign, mapping her entirely unfamiliar features onto the only world he knows.
All right, let's get into Section 1, the mysterious visitor. We're talking total sensory overload here.
The guy is just completely bombarded. His normal environment is super austere, right? But suddenly, he's taking in all this crazy new data. He notes her golden complexion, her blue-black, twisted hair tied with gold strings, and a beauty blazing like the sun. For sound, he describes a voice pleasant like a male blackbird and movements that jingle like ganders. He even specifically points out a pure, fragrant scent amplified by the breeze. He's processing all this information with intense, almost clinical precision, completely missing the underlying context of what and who is actually causing this massive sensory explosion.
Moving on to Section 2, decoding the physical form through literal descriptions.
So here's the crucial point. Because he's never seen a woman, he defaults to describing female anatomy in the absolute most literal anatomical terms he has available. Listen to his actual words again. 2 balls of flesh without a single hair. The reality, he's looking at the courtesan's breasts. But lacking the biological or cultural vocabulary to identify them, he just states their geometry and texture as if he were describing a weird new species of plant or a strange rock formation he found out in the woods.
And this whole mapping of the unknown to the known, it just keeps going with her clothing and jewelry. He equates the courtesan's dazzling jewelry to elements of weather and nature, saying it shines like lightning in the sky. He even equates a golden string shining from under her clothing to his own ascetic waist string. He completely misses the concept of aesthetic adornment or seduction. To him, she's literally just wearing a super fancy version of his own monk's belt.
And it happens with sound, too. Hearing the jingling of her bracelets and anklets as she walks, his brain immediately jumps to the familiar sounds of his forest home. Specifically, he thinks the metal ornaments sound exactly like delighted geese, ganders, splashing on a sheet of water. It's a wonderfully poetic description, but it highlights his total innocence. He doesn't know what jewelry is for, so he just assumes her clothes naturally mimic the local wildlife.
Which brings us to Section 3, Rituals of a Stranger, and some hilariously misinterpreted play.
Check out this incredibly rigid chronological breakdown of an action. He notes that the visitor carries a globular fruit that reaches the ground, leaps up to the sky, and causes the visitor to whirl around like a tree in the breeze. What's happening here? The visitor is literally just bouncing a ball and playing. But our narrator describes it in this intense, step-by-step manner, proving how utterly alien the concept of play or leisure is to his strictly structured world. To him, this has to be a highly complex physical penance.
And because the visitor playfully tells him, "Oh, these are just my specific religious observances," his entire definition of piety gets instantly comically redefined. Imagine being a monk who thinks fasting and meditation are the only ways to show devotion, and then a beautiful stranger shows up and says, "Actually, in my order, we bounce balls, drink special water, and touch faces." He just accepts this completely at face value, expanding his theological worldview to include these new, highly intimate and entertaining activities.
Now this right here is where the dramatic irony absolutely peaks.
mingling his mouth with my own, uttered a sound that was exceedingly pleasant. I mean, we, the audience, know exactly what's happening. He's being seduced with a kiss. But Rishyasringa earnestly records and reports this to his father as just a pleasant sound made by two mouths pressing together. It's just another fascinating ritual from this strange golden-complexioned student. His brain's total lack of romantic context completely protects his innocence, even while he's directly participating in his own seduction.
Let's dive into Section 4, the fruits and the water, featuring some very exotic offerings. So, the visitor gives him food, which he obviously categorizes as fruits. But listen to the specific characteristics he lists: unmatched in taste, no rind on the outside, and no stone within them. He is completely baffled by this. He tells his dad that the fruits he's been eating his whole life are nothing compared to these. What he doesn't realize is that he's likely eating rich confections, pastries, or sweets made by city dwellers, things completely foreign to a natural forest hermitage. His logic is just, well, it's sweet and I'm eating it, so it must be a fruit, just a magical fruit without a peel or a pit. And honestly, this is probably the funniest disconnect of the whole story. The visitor gives him something to drink. He describes it as water of an exceedingly fine flavor that gave him great pleasure. The side effect, as he puts it, the ground seemed to be moving under my feet. He genuinely thinks he's ingested some sort of divine, magical water associated with the visitor's intense religious merit. The reality? He's just experiencing intoxication for the very first time. Yep, he's drunk. But his brain processes the room spinning not as inebriation, but as a mystical religious experience.
This leads us to Section 5, a yearning for penance, a sad departure.
Now, at this point in the narrative, the humor kind of fades away. He says, "His departure hath saddened my heart, and my frame seems to be in a burning sensation." What we're really looking at here is a heartbreakingly naive expression of raw human desire and psychological awakening. He has absolutely zero concept of love, lust, or romantic attachment. So when he feels that deep physical and emotional ache of missing this beautiful stranger, his ascetic mind frames it as a burning sensation, almost like a spiritual fever. He actually begs his father to let him go find this student so they can practice these same penances together every single day. He states plainly that his soul will be in torment if he doesn't see the visitor again. He's completely unaware that his soul's torment is actually just the sudden onset of romantic and physical yearning. He thinks he's feeling this intense drive for religious discipline, to bounce the fruit and drink the ground-moving water, when in fact, he has just fallen hopelessly in love.
This brilliant ancient text leaves us with a seriously profound thought to end on. We've had a good laugh at how Rishyasringa misinterpreted a kiss as a religious sound or alcohol as magic water simply because he lacked the vocabulary for them. But it really forces us to ask, how does your own personal context limit your understanding of the world around you? If we can only ever describe the unknown using the vocabulary of the known, what realities are sitting right in front of you that you are completely misinterpreting? Take a second to think about your own blind spots. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning how you see the world.